Hello and welcome to Rouse IAS. Today we are back with our session number 3 on personality test video series. Today's session is focusing on the aspirants who have already appeared for the mains exam and are awaiting their results. We have been getting a lot of queries from these aspirants. What should they do in the intervening period of these three months or 2 months whenever the result is out? What do they need to do to prepare for personality test? So today's session will be oriented towards more of these aspirants. Amongst us, we have today a very eminent personality, Mr. Rajiv Walia, who is a former IAS officer of 1975 batch. In his career spanning more than 3 decades, Mr. Rajiv has served in various capacities in his home cadre of state, Tamil Nadu, and also in centre with Government of India. His assignments exposed him to a variety of sectors which include governance, policy making, law and order, and development. During his long checkered career, Mr. Rajiv Walia also served with the UN for 10 years. And he was handling a very important assignments on transnational organized crime. He was working as a regional program coordinator initially and later on as an advisor and consultant. And one of the rare feats of Mr. Rajiv Walia's career is also that during his career he served with 6 cabinet secretaries. Another star in his career is about his field tenure, a very challenging assignment while he was in Jaffna in Sri Lanka during Op Pavan when IPKF was deployed. Mr. Rajiv Walia was working as a civilian administrator of the land which was occupied, which was taken by the IPKF from LTTE, and he had a 2 years tenure there. Welcome, sir, to today's session. Sir, as I mentioned that today we'll be talking about and trying to guide the aspirants who will be appearing for the personality test this year. We are expecting that the results of these mains will be out by March end and another 2 weeks or so since the PT will start. So we have about 6 to 8 weeks of time. I would like to ask you, sir, a candidate who is aspiring, who is quite sure to go for the personality test, what should he do in these 2 months to prepare himself?
Thank you, Mr. Girotra. First of all, let me wish the students who have appeared for the mains all the best, that they qualify for the personality test. And well, we have about 6 to 8 weeks, maybe longer, for those candidates whose interviews may come up later. So we may have on the outside about 3 months from now. And this 3 months is a time not to be wasted. It's a very important interregnum, and all of you must believe in yourself that you will qualify for the test. So start preparing for the personality test. And basically there are 3 features that you need to understand. You need to plan, because without a plan you won't get anywhere. You need to have a plan for these 2-3 months. And then you need to prepare as per the plan. And finally you need to practice what you have prepared. So these are the 3 components of what I'll be talking about. Now, planning for what? Now, I will not make this very complicated for you. I'll keep it very simple. Now, when you plan, you must plan for certain things that are most likely to appear in the personality test. You must plan first for the personality test itself, understand what a personality test is, understand what the UPSC is looking for when they conduct a personality test. You must plan for your DAF. The DAF form that you have filled is the most important document that the members will have in front of them. They have never seen you, they are seeing you for the first time, and all the information that they have is in the DAF. So they'll ask questions on whatever you filled in the DAF. They'll ask questions on current affairs. Now, current affairs is important because when they are trying to assess your personality, other than DAF, they'll ask you about what's happening in the environment around you. And then they'll ask you some questions about your subject. Now, not on academics, because they've already tested your academic knowledge there. they'll ask you about applications which can be related to the current environment in terms of your subject. Communication is very important. You must plan for honing your communication skills. And finally, you must plan for the unexpected. You may prepare for your DAF, for your current affairs, for everything, but the unexpected you must plan for. How do you deal with the unexpected? Now, this is the plan. Not too complicated. You must plan for the test itself, for the personality test. You will plan for DAF, for current affairs, for your subject, to improve your communications, and plan for the unexpected. Now, Mr. Girotra, if you allow me, I'll proceed on these lines.
Yes, please.
And advise the students, aspirants, on each one of these 4 or 5 elements that I've spoken about. Now, the personality test. Now, the first thing to disabuse yourself is that this is not an interview. And because it is not an interview, you don't have to answer all questions. So what the members are looking for, what the UPSC is looking for in you is your personality. They are trying to assess your personality, whether your personality, elements of your personality fit the requirements of a civil servant or a police officer or any of the other allied services. So you must keep that overarching fact in front of you, at the back of your mind. Now, what is your personality? First, you must understand, what do you understand by personality? Now, the personality can be defined in various ways, but to keep it very simple, what is personality? It is the sum total of your genes that you have inherited from your parents, of the environment that you have lived in, okay, and the academics. So these are the 3 elements. Your genes, you can't do anything about your genes. About the environment, since about your friends, about your family, about the people you've been going around, the places you've visited, all of this is environment. That also influences.
And your experiences in life.
And your experiences in life. So this is all the environment. And then, of course, your studies. Because you studied in a school, you've gone to college, you've gone to universities. That also molds your personality. So the sum total of these 3 things is your personality. You can say 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. That makes your personality. So where does this take you? It takes you to a belief that you can't do much about your personality. It's already developed. It's already evolved. But that's not the end of it. It can be fine-tuned. It can be fine-tuned to the requirements of the civil services, the requirements of the police services, the requirements of the other allied services. So you have these 3 elements in your personality, but how to strategize and bring them into focus during the personality test is the key. Now, what are the UPSC members looking for? This is the background. What are they looking for? You are appearing for the civil services examination. That means they are looking for officer-like qualities. We call them OLQs. Whether you are a fit person to take on the responsibilities of an officer. Because you will be working initially in the field, then you will go to the ministries, then you will be involved in policy planning in the field, you are involved in implementing those policies. So they are looking at a person who will fit those requirements. Okay. Now, what are these officer-like qualities that they will assess during the course of the interview? The first and the foremost is your honesty and your integrity. Now, you cannot have a civil servant candidate, an aspirant, whose integrity is doubtful or his honesty is doubtful. So this will come out in the manner in which you address the questions.
I was about to ask this question. How does the board assesses your honesty in those 30 minutes and your integrity?
Oh, they are very clever people. They'll find out. Very simple. If you are guessing an answer, you are not being honest. If you're trying to convey to them something which you're not yourself convinced about and answer in an unstructured manner, they'll know that there is something wrong. So it is a good quality to say no, sir. I don't know this, but you can't say no to everything. So you have to answer to the best of your abilities and then acknowledge to the board that this is all that you know at the present, but there is much more to be done.
So there is no harm in saying, sir, I don't know, but I can guess, or I know this much, sir. Could I explain?
No. You can say I don't know, but don't guess. Now, guess is a double-edged weapon in the sense that if you guess right, you won't get marks because you are guessing. And if you guess wrong, you will get negative marks. So don't venture into guessing. Don't even ask. So honesty and integrity is something which they are looking for in a candidate. They're looking for composure, whether you get ruffled in difficult circumstances. Because when you are in the field as an officer, you might have a law and order situation. You might have a situation where you have to take a call on what to do. There might be stone pelting and you are there. How do you deal with the situation? So do you remain calm or you panic? So that is another aspect that they are trying to assess. And don't worry how they will assess, they'll eventually find out. Whether you are a candidate with composure or you panic in different situations, they'll find out. They are experienced people.
So that's what they call it, stress interviews?
Well, they can put you through a stress interview, and that can be really stressful. So, God forbid you are put through a stress interview, but that is one way to find out whether you are, or they may take you on a wrong track. You may answer correctly, but they'll say no. This is not right, this is not right, try to unnerve you. So how do you retain your balance? Very, very important.
Sir.
And of course, they are trying to assess your analytical skills. Whether in a given situation you are able to analyze. This can be assessed very easily through simple questions. Like the place you were born, what are the features of that place? Now you can struggle with a simple question like this. So keep it simple, and that is the best way to handle situations. Now, of course, the last part in the personality test is communications. Now, communication doesn't mean that you speak in a verbose manner. You speak in a flowery language, whether it is English or Hindi or any medium of instruction. Communication is okay if you are able to tell the person, convey to the person what you have in your mind. As simple as that. You might struggle with the right words. So occasionally, not very often, occasionally you can use bilingual. If your interview is in Hindi, you can use some English terminology and vice versa. But by and large, keep to the language that you have opted for. But you should be able to convey what you want to say. This is basically what is required in a personality test. There are a lot of other things, but keep it simple. Take care of these 4-5 elements, and that's okay. That's all that they are looking for. Okay.
How much is the role of a DAF in a personality test? I mean, how much weightage does it have? The questions, I suppose, it's like breaking the ice when you are speaking to somebody. You need something to talk about. So the fountainhead of the discussion should be the DAF. I mean, something they pick up from DAF, and then the questions flow out of that.
I think that is the most important thing that a candidate must understand. Because the board, as I said earlier, doesn't know anything about you except what you've written in your DAF. So when they look at your DAF, and everybody has your DAF in front of them, they'll ask you, they might ask you a simple question, tell us something about yourself. And you are likely to give an answer on where you were born, your siblings, your parents, on where you studied in school and college. So be careful in what you say in your introduction. Keep it small. Don't try and eulogize yourself. That I was a champion of this, I passed, I got flying colors. They all know about it. So keep it simple, keep it brief. And if you want the board to go in a particular direction, then you can highlight, I was very interested in ABC. So the board becomes inquisitive and asks you about that, which is an area of interest to you. Now, this is the beginning of the DAF. But in these 2-3 months, what you must do is you must keep a copy of DAF in front of you. Go through each word, each line that you entered. And I'm very serious about it. Well, anything can come, any question can arise from your DAF. You know, you've written your place of birth is Ambala or Madurai or Shillong. So you must know about your place of birth. If your place of birth is Delhi, you must know something about Delhi, isn't it? Maybe the history of Delhi.
Sir.
If you are a history student, they'll ask you the history of student. They'll ask you what are the problems of the place where you were born with. What are the development challenges? So be familiar with your place of birth, your school, your college. If it is in the name of say Aurobindo or any other famous personality, you must know about him. So the idea is that if you spend time in your school or any educational institutions or in the place where you were born, you should know something about it. And you are being assessed for a very senior job.
So it will be worthwhile, sir. I mean, one of the techniques which just came to my mind, that you pick up something from your DAF, think of the answers which you're going to give, and then make questions beneath it. It's like a tree. I mean, if I give this answer, this is the likely question which can be asked. Okay, if I reply to this, then these are the likely questions.
So yeah, very true. The trick is to anticipate questions. Now, if you anticipate even half of the questions, or even 2 or 3 of the 10-15 questions that are asked, if you can anticipate those, then your answer is prepared. So you're right. You must prepare questions that will arise from your DAF, particularly your hobbies and extracurricular activities. Now, hobbies, do not take them lightly. Extracurricular activities, do not take them lightly. They are there in the DAF for a purpose. Because hobbies build your personality. Extracurricular activities are a reflection of your personality. So if you say that you've done work with an NGO in your extracurricular, be very sure what kind of work that you've done. If your hobby is cricket, if your hobby is carom board or whatever, know something about it. You can't write a hobby and say, I don't know about it. Now, these are areas where you can't get away with. So if you have filled your DAF intelligently, then you prepare yourself. If you've done yoga, if you said yoga, now be prepared for questions on yoga, because most of the members are probably practicing yoga in that age group. So be very careful in what you fill, and don't be shy, and you might get stuck. Some of the candidates might say yoga, and the members, one of the members or other members may be more informed on yoga, and then you can say, well, it's a hobby, but I am not a professional yoga teacher. So get out of that kind of a difficult situation. So DAF is important. Be prepared of your DAF. Meticulously write down, maybe you can write down 30, 40, 50 questions, micro questions, mini questions that can arise from DAF. Write them down in bullet points. Now, my advice is that you might read and read and read and put it in your memory that this is what I would like to say. But in those 5, 10 minutes, 30 minutes, you should be able to recall. How do you recall? You recall if you have put these points, your answers, in bullet points. And if it is in bullet points and you have gone through the bullet points 20, 30, 40, 50 times, they will stick.
Sure.
Okay? So this is what my recommendation in these 2-3 periods.
Sir, you are presently working as managing editor of Asia News Agency, which is a diplomatic news consultancy service. You are updating yourself with current affairs. Now, somehow, sir, the current affairs is weighing down candidates to a very large extent. I mean, everybody is bothered about current affairs, current affairs, current affairs. So how much role does current affairs play in personality test, and how does board assess a person by asking a question from current affairs, let's say any issue which is current? How does a board judges a person's personality trait through the current affairs questions?
Yeah, the current affairs is an essential element of the personality test, just like DAF is. DAF actually breaks the ice. between the board members and the student. Now, when you get into serious discussions, you are looking at current affairs. And current affairs is not something, not just the news aspect of it, not just the factual aspect. They're trying to assess whether you understand a particular situation. The farm protests, the 3 farm laws. Do you understand why these people have been on the borders of Delhi for months? Do you understand? They want to find you. They'll try to probe your mind on what are the issues. MSP, the minimum support price, or legalizing the MSP. Now, do you know about the MSP? How many crops does the MSP have? 23, 22, 21? Do you know? Well, ask yourself. But how is the mandi system being followed in respect of all the 23 crops? No, certainly not. But followed, yes, in Punjab and in Haryana and in Madhya Pradesh, but not for all crops, not in all states. So, why are the farmers of a particular state or states protesting and others are not? Another question that will come. Okay, what are the legal implications of, what are the implications of legalizing the MSP, which is a demand of the farmers? Now, how do you formulate your views on that? So again, you need to read editorials. You have to form an opinion, because the UPSC is trying to assess whether you have an opinion. And your opinion will come only with your understanding. So do you understand the problem? And then after understanding, do you have an opinion? It may be pro-government or not so pro-government, doesn't matter. You don't have to be very defensive and support the government policies at all costs. You are an individual person. If you are a yes man, then you are not needed in the civil services. Okay, because the government is looking for people, for individuals who will give variety of advice, for the political masters to sort of make up their mind. They're not looking for yes men. Okay. So similarly, farm laws is a very current topic you should be familiar with. And COVID, again, a question which begs itself in the personality in some form or the other. What is COVID? Where did it come from? These are factual things, but understand the factual things. How many people affected? What is the mortality rate? What is the P factor? Yeah. So all of these, you will understand what are the new variants. What is the situation in India? Are we going through a second wave or a third wave? Or is it okay? Is it cool? What are the socio-economic impact of COVID? Social impact, huge. Migrants issue has not gone away. It's not in the newspapers, but it's a very live issue for a personality test. Okay? And because of the migrants, because of the slums, why didn't we have the kind of infection rate that Western countries had? Why is India, the mortality rate in India very low, and why are the figures so low compared to the West? Well, that's another question you have to answer. So, very important to understand current affairs.
Yes, sir. Now, you highlighted 2 examples, farm laws and COVID and so like. Now, one aspect is about the knowledge. I mean, what is the issue about? Your analytical ability. You are making an opinion. Now, opinion making, of course, the board is checking whether you are an independent thinking person who can make your opinion. Now, how do they check the personality trait? Is being critical about government policy shows your negative trait? Although you have highlighted this point, I mean, you could be at a variance, having a different opinion from the rest.
No, you should not be shy of expressing your opinion. I think don't be radical. Don't be a sort of revolutionary that I want to do X, Y, Z, and then present a personality to the board that, well, I think out of the box. Thinking out of the box is fine, but don't present opinions which you cannot justify. If you can justify an opinion, even if it is contrary to the present understanding, it is fine. But don't take a radical and extreme views. Be very, very clear about it. Do not take extreme views. For example, on the judiciary. Now, the judiciary, whether it is compromised, whether it is active or not. Now, these are very sensitive questions. So, take a balanced view on these matters. Ayodhya, building a temple, was that right? Now, again, you are treading on very, very sensitive questions. Most of the time, the interview members will not ask you politically or religiously sensitive questions. They will not. But in case, and therefore you should not express your views one way or the other in such matters if you can help it. But if the board member persists, then be very careful in answering, expressing your opinions about sensitive questions. But by and large, they will not put you through this test.
Fine, sir. There are a number of personality traits which are checked during the personality. Now, I'll come to another aspect, sir. There are a lot of people who have, made it to these services, and then they talk about during the toppers talk how they prepared, what all they did. Does listening to toppers talk help?
Well, it helps in a way to sort of.
When I'm asking this question in the perspective that a person who is going to appear for the interview, should he be watching these videos of toppers talk? And
I don't think too many. Well, watch them because they are sharing their experiences, but your experience will be totally different. So watch them to maybe some of the toppers, but I won't give too much credit. They do no harm, but don't form your opinions merely on those interviews.
Okay, sir. You mentioned about the oratory skills. I mean, how you convey your thoughts. In these 2 months, a person who is not really very confident about himself, what can he do, sir, to improve on his speaking skills?
Well, basically, speaking is a measure of your confidence. If you're confident about yourself, then you speak well. If you're unconfident, you don't speak well. So how do you get your confidence? You get your confidence by understanding a subject. You understand a subject, you have a firm opinion about a subject, your confidence will come automatically, and so will your speak. Your speak will get reflected, or your confidence will get reflected in the matter. So if you are a hesitant person, if you are an introvert, if you normally don't do public speaking, which most of you would not have, if you're not an orator, these are not qualities that the UPSC is looking for. They are not looking for orators, they're not looking for public speakers, they're only looking for honest people who can express themselves well, who can analyze given situations.
Another question, sir, which is asked is how many mock interviews one should take before the interview? How many are too many? I mean, people do get time. Some of the candidates who are interviewed in the end, they have almost about 1.5 to 2 months.
Well, very important question, and I have myself noticed candidates going to 5, 6, 7 institutes for interviews. That's totally avoidable. Meaning you cannot go to 5 different institutes to practice your mocks and then come up with a cogent sort of picture on what you should do. Each mock interview institution will give you a different perspective.
There's a subjective.
So once you have 5 different perspectives, what do? You are back to square one. So I think you should focus on institutes which are credible, and that's your choice. But ask your parents, ask your colleagues, ask people, if you can, in touch with the people who have gone through institutions in the past. Identify good and proper institutes and don't go to too many. My advice is take 1 or 2, that's about it. And the numbers of mock interviews, again, maybe 2, 3 at the most. Space them out for at least 10-15 days each, because if you get some feedback in one mag, work on that feedback, come after 15 days, and certainly not before the interview. Okay, maybe 2, 3, and if you're very apprehensive, take another one. There's no number that you can put on it. It all depends on how you feel you are prepared. but don't take conflicting advice. And go to interview boards which are manned by bureaucrats. Because bureaucrats are civil servants, they are experienced civil servants who've got 30, 40 years behind them. They've gone through this drill, they know what it all means. So they will give you the kind of advice which will be appropriate. And they are, most of the time, more senior than the UPSC members.
Sir.
So you see, you must understand that the constitution of the board, of a mock board.
And the perils of getting a wrong feedback is, it could be destructive for somebody. If you go to an inexperienced board and somebody gives you a feedback just for the heck of, for the sake of giving a feedback. So it could be counterproductive.
Yeah, it could be counterproductive. So it can backfire also. It can backfire very dangerously. Because we've seen over the years candidates coming up with views which are outlandish as far as the UPSC interviews are concerned. But this is the advice they've been given. So you take that advice and you use it. It can be fatal.
On the day of the interview, sir, the D-Day, so to say, there are so many questions going on in the mind of a candidate. What dress to wear? How should one dress up?
I think that's...
what tips would you give for the day?
Dressing up is important because if you are appearing in an interview in May and the temperature is 40 degrees, if you're not comfortable in a suit, please don't wear a suit. If you're comfortable, by all means, it enhances your personality, the way you look. Because, but dress comfortably. Dress comfortably, don't overdress. And before the interview, don't pick up your dress just on the day of the interview.
Yes.
Because you need to get used to it. Lady candidates will have to get used to a sari if they want to use a sari.
Yes.
And male candidates will have to get used to a suit if they are if they propose to wear a suit. To wear them in your mocks. Wear them in your mocks. Make them full dress rehearsals. But on the day of the interview, just relax. Don't overstress yourself. Just relax. Maybe do some meditation. Maybe do some yoga. You can't do yoga before sitting outside the room. Well, but you can certainly meditate when you're sitting outside the room. But all of you will have your own on your means of relaxing. But do relax.
There are many myths about PT, sir. Though people say it is not a knowledge test, it is not KT, it is PT, personality test. But still, people have myths about one board being more lenient, the other one being a little more tougher. Although the system is...
But that is to be expected if you have half a dozen boards. So they will all not be like to like. There'll be boards which will be tougher, which will be more liberal, but that is all moderated. You don't have to worry about that.
Sure.
The UPSC will moderate. UPSC also is aware of these things, so they will moderate. If you have a chairman of the board or a member of the board who is very, very, very aggressive, the UPSC will moderate. So you don't have to worry about the board. And the biggest myth is that this is an interview.
Yes.
So you have to answer all questions. 10 questions, if you answer 8, 9, the better. If you answer 6, 7, well, the worst. No. It is not an interview, it's a personality test. They are trying to basically judge your honesty and integrity. I use these words again and again because these two words are the key. Okay? They might put you through situations, real situations, to assess your analytical skills, to assess your composure. They might say, okay, you are the district magistrate or the deputy commissioner or the collector of a particular district, and where COVID has broken out, how would you tackle COVID differently in your district? Okay? Real life situation. There is a law and order situation. There is a mob which is burning buildings, which is pelting stones. How would you react as a police officer? So get to understand these real life situations. They can be tricky, but they are one way to assess your thing. But another myth about UPSC interviews, that the board will be uncomfortable, will try to make you uncomfortable. Unless they are putting you through a stress, they will not make you uncomfortable just for the sake of making you uncomfortable. No. They understand that you are fresh from college. You are not a civil servant yet. You are only an aspiring civil servant. So they don't expect the moon from you. They are only looking at whether you can deal with situations that may arise when you become an officer. So don't be under the impression that the board is a test of all the skills that a bureaucrat needs. No, you are still to get there.
All right, sir. The transcripts of previous UPSC interviews of yesteryears is also available. Should a candidate go through those questions? Will it help?
Well, you can just glance through them, but don't. What we are looking at transcripts is trying to guess the questions. Now, the point is, it is best to anticipate questions from your DAF and from the current affairs of the last 3 months. This is the best way of getting. Well, you can have an idea of what is the board, what kind of questions they are answering, but don't use that as your lifeline. No. Create your own lifeline.
To sum it up, sir, in the end, your final advice to the candidates who will be going for personality tests now.
I think you be calm, you have prepared well, and if you have prepared well, then you needn't worry about things. The only advice that I would like to give is that how do you recall what you have prepared over the last 3 months? Now that is the key, because we have seen candidates struggling with answers, giving unstructured answers, because they have so much information in their mind on a particular subject. They want to tell you all, but in an unstructured manner. So the advice is that in those crucial minutes, you should be able to recall what you've studied. How do you recall? I repeat, bullet points. Make bullet points on the topics that you have prepared. Don't make questions and answers, topics. Prepare topics and then prepare bullet points. If you have gone through the bullet points 10 times, 20 times, 30 times, 40 times, they stick in your mind and then they'll come. The recall is the most important thing. And if you stress yourself, you won't be able to recall.
All right, sir. Thank you very much, sir, for this valuable advice to the candidates. We have been getting a lot of inquiries about what they have to do. I'm sure that the words of wisdom which you've given them will help them to prepare. Thank you for taking out time, sir, and being with us here.
Thank you. Thank you.